Hi, everybody. This is Slava Kurilyak joining you from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I am super excited to bring on a guest, a friend of mine who I have known for a long time. Nick is the co-founder, CTO at Acoutera. He and his co-founder have built an amazing company here in Vancouver also, and I'm excited to bring on Nick for three reasons. Number one, Nick has a lot of experience in helping homeowners to renovate their houses. Number two, Nick is an expert in technology, and he is very passionate about scaling tech and doing everything around technology. And number three, Nick and I have chatted in the past about the use of AI technologies at Acoutera. I'm super excited to get him on the show where him and I have a further discussion about how Acoutera team is leveraging technology to simplify renovations. Again, the title of this interview and live stream is How to Simplify the Renovations. And now I will bring on Nick for a brief introduction. Perfect. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be on here. Pretty excited. How you doing?
Doing very well, Nick. Thanks very much. I am super excited to have you on and allow the audience to learn more from you, learn more from the Acoutera team. I know you guys are scaling, and I know you guys have benefited from what has happened to the world because of COVID-19, and I have so many questions for you, Nick. I'm super excited to interview you. I will begin this interview by asking you to give us and give your audience a brief introduction to yourself. Who are you, and where do you come from?
Yeah, awesome. I'm Nikolai Stakheiko. I'm a CTO at Acoutera Renovations. We're essentially a startup in the renovation space, and our goal, our ultimate goal, is to basically take the whole renovation process, simplify it, and using software, using innovative technologies, make it a simple integrated process that just works. There's a couple of moving parts to it, including integrated materials, automated 3D design, and a simple sequential flow. So we can get into all those details if you would like, but yeah.
I appreciate that. It sounds like, Nick, you have really thought of how you can reinvent this traditional process of renovating and improving houses. And I want to start the next series of questions about, what is your motivation for going into renovation space? Like, why pursue these types of problems?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, myself personally, there's maybe 10% of it or higher is just wanting to get into an industry that is stale and make meaningful change. The other high majority of the reason for kind of being in this industry is just like being a little bit in it. You see all the issues and all the problems, and it's a really old industry that hasn't really been it hasn't seen any innovative change over the last few decades, even though other industries, for example, the say taxi industry has benefited from the internet and smartphones. If you look at the traditional just construction and home improvement process, it has not really leveraged many of the technologies that have come with the internet to a meaningful or at least optimal degree. So it's seeing all these issues and trying to solve them. That's really what's motivating us.
Absolutely. You have identified a need in the marketplace, and this need is to help people to be more in comfort to where they live. You are starting, as far as I can see, with bathroom renovations. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are expanding beyond bathroom renovations. You're now doing other types of renovations inside sort of residential types of houses, including paintings. I'm curious to know, what is sort of the vision to Acoutera as far as the future state, right? When you're envisioning that future, what does that future look like?
Absolutely. So I think in the most ideal future, you can take your smartphone, you can point it at your room. So let's say it's a kitchen, let's say it's a bedroom, and you don't like the state it's in, but you have some ideas of what it could look like if it was to be renovated, if it was to be different. But it's kind of hard to have a concrete, exact idea of what all the materials are. So you say you point this camera at your space and you can instantly see almost like a augmented overlay to see what new items will look like in that space, what it would look like with new floors, new paint, new lights, and what the total cost of that's going to be, where all of the materials are locally sourced or shipped in from other cities in your vicinity, how much the whole total labor scope is going to cost, how much the material scope is going to cost. So all the tools are there, but right now it's not possible to do with any given experience if you try to find one. So we're ultimately, what we want to do is what we are doing actually is taking people's kind of preconceived ideas of what they want their space to be, trying to extract that, turn that into a 3D model. So we take their kind of implicit, say, dreams of what the space will look like, their home will look like. We turn that into an explicit, visually accessible 3D model, and then we take that 3D model and we turn that into physical reality, where we, through the rest of the process, you have the material shipped in, you have the labor people come in and actually install them, and after everything is said and done, we take these materials, feed it back into the system like a loop, and then other future customers, homeowners can benefit from the ratings, the information received from this data. So it's making the renovation home improvement space, kind of taking that and bring that into the 21st century, where it's simple and it just works. Yeah.
I love this concept of simplifying the existing processes, right? So as a technologist, Nick, you are reinventing what has been ingrained in people's minds. And I love that you describe this vision of using your cell phone as one way to reimagine your current space. Augmented reality or even virtual reality is an extension of that. And now I'm also interested about how you're leveraging a 3D modeling in your process. You've described that a user who is interested in renovations, they can log on to Acoutera. For those who are unfamiliar with Acoutera, feel free to go to acoutera.com. That's ACOUTERA.com. A link in the show notes. I will make sure everyone will see that. Acoutera is where the prospects, if you were, can log on to. They can view what it is that you offer, but they can also create a 3D model on your website. So I'm actually curious to know, what are you doing, and can you share more about your 3D modeling process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've traditionally, like, let's say if you're doing design, well, I can maybe start with the problem. So the problem is when you're doing any sort of renovation, it's best to have it like a pretty good idea of what the final thing is going to look like. Because if you don't figure out design and you start ordering materials once the renovation starts, that's terrible because you will end up ordering items that are going to take maybe 14 days to ship if you're a picky client and want to have like really nice like finishes in your house. If you're not picky, it might be faster, but it will still be might not be the best final design. So So we want to figure out design first. And traditionally, it's kind of done using desktop-based softwares such as Blender or 3ds Max or even SketchUp. And you create this like 3D walkthrough or images or renders that are not really scalable, not very replicable. What we have done with 3D is we've gone browser-based. So to essentially enable anybody who's looking to get a renovation done to have an instant access to it from just their phone or from a Google search. And you can just, in a few clicks, choose a design and then choose a layout that fits your space. Like, for example, we're doing bathrooms right now, and you can choose like bathroom layout 2, and that's your layout. We overlay this set of materials which is in the design that you picked and combine those two to show you what it would look like completed with all the price breakdowns. And by browser based, it's using WebGL. WebGL is a like a framework for enabling you to have to view things in 3D in just in your browser. It's using the canvas element of HTML. It's really cool, and I haven't seen that significant use of 3JS in comparison to things like 3ds Max, Blender for interior design and renovation. So it's definitely pretty awesome to be in this, like one of the first people to be in this industry to actually use it to fulfill clients' needs. So.
Yeah, 3D modeling, I think, is definitely one of the best ways to visualize, what is the impact of your renovation on the business, on the household. 3D makes things a little bit more realistic. They make it come to life. If you think of it from a perspective of, if we are creating a better house for ourselves, how do we envision that? And you describe this process of guiding the user through a 3D modeling process and allowing them to determine their ideal bathroom, for example. And this is a guided process. This is often sort of in the AI circles called augmented intelligence, where you're augmenting the individual and you're giving them information, and that information hopefully is valuable enough that it allows them to move forward faster, quicker. The other side of creativity, computational creativity, is where you are now creating something, and that creative sort of endeavor is now doing something that perhaps is not augmentation, but perhaps it's its own intelligence. And here you're really aiming to replace certain parts of the creative process. Computational creativity is quite complex and quite interesting. And now there are technologies that allows companies like Acoutera to explore this more and more. I'll give you one example, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and that's generative models. Oftentimes they go by generative adversarial networks, or GAN for short. These models are really powerful, and they allow you to explore the computational space without being sort of biased by the human opinion, or at least getting the human in process. And generative models are an amazing technologies that we see at Produvia and more being used by companies around the world. Generative models allow companies like Acoutera or others to really explore something that may have not existed before, perhaps generate an image or a video perhaps of something that did not exist. Generative models do require quite a bit of data. That's the one sort of major requirement of these solutions. But once you do have enough data, imagine you have enough images of chairs, and these images perhaps were even generated in 3D models like you've mentioned. Now you can apply generative models on top to really explore the creative space of what a new type of perhaps industrial design will look like, or a new type of renovation will see and feel like. And it's great to hear you're already leveraging 3D modeling in your process. And it would be amazing to see Acoutera and others in the real estate space and the renovation space start to adapt some of the more modern generative models.
Yeah, absolutely. GAN is pretty interesting. Uh, there's a lot of ways just AI in general can be used um, in the 3D design process. For example, most renovations, they're really not crazy different in what's involved. It's generally a similar process for step by step, at least sequentially, for the labor things that need to occur to actually complete the renovation. The materials do vary, but the categories of materials don't necessarily, unless you're doing different rooms. So, for example, you might have the same category of you have a bathtub in a bathroom renovation, and you just have different instances within this category. There's and what we've seen is people don't really leverage the this sequential yet very repetitive process and don't learn from it from a kind of constant improvement perspective. We kind of do as humans, like if you do enough estimates in a bathroom renovation or in a kitchen renovation, you kind of know like, okay, this is going to cost this much. But that's like training ourselves. We don't really create nobody really creates, or it's hard to find something where as there is more usage, the whole product gets better over time. For example, if you kind of have a series of inputs that kind of are more commonly chosen than other inputs, like this bathtub is chosen all the time. You can even predict like, okay, if the customer is choosing this type of faucet, they might want to see this bathtub. So there's a lot of ways to like integrate AI um, into the whole design process from a 3D perspective. GAN is really interesting. Yeah. It's a pretty promising technology for sure. It'd be interesting to see how we can leverage that. There's also even just like you can now. There's a lot of research, and just in 2020 that was just from an image you can predict the depth of each pixel without using lidar. Like there's, I think it's like MPL or something. One of the mechanisms used to do that, but it's really interesting. It's I think the future is seeing things in 3D, and it seems like there's easier, less barriers for that in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that more and more companies are now using computer vision models in their pipelines in order to leverage AI technologies and start to leverage the imagery and videos that they're collecting on their sort of business processes. Computer vision models today are definitely one of the hottest and most adopted technologies that we see. And there's a reason for that. Like you've mentioned, Nick, that if you are able to use pixels to represent the real world, then perhaps we can start to better understand the world. Perhaps we can better start to ask questions about that real world. And being able to sort of ask these questions allows companies to offer even more insight. So one area that we see like mass adoption at the moment in computer tech is for self-driving cars, right? This is an example that I often give to the audience because sometimes AI technology seems far from sort of our data process. Sometimes it seems like a disconnect between the humanity and the technology. But I give self-driving car example because it is the perfect use of the tech in that it allows us to live a better life, a more safer life. So what does that look like, right? So let's take one particular example. Let's consider the company Tesla, right? Tesla is using primarily sort of traditional cameras to capture data as the car drives itself. A traditional camera you would find from your cell phone, from your camera like a DSLR or other types, or even drones today that are sort of using the latest tech, primarily using a vision-based camera. So what does that mean, right? So you have a camera, it's capturing imagery, your cell phone, you look around the room, you're capturing pixels. This is the raw input to AI systems, and this is where most of the promise is today, right? Tesla is using primarily videos and imagery from these traditional cameras, and they are not using LiDAR, right? They are not using this advanced technology, which is also readily available. And there's a reason for that, because the algorithms are improving to the point where now you have deep learning teams, you have machine learning teams able to stitch data and make sense of, imagine, multiple pictures, multiple videos, and give those imagery some sort of a map, some sort of a 3D model. And this is where I think that really the power lies, right? If you're able to take a picture of one corner of the room and you're able to scan that room, well, stitching images together by using more advanced technologies like computer vision, using deep learning, you're able to make sense of a 2D world in a 3D context. And now you open up a possibility that did not exist before, right? Now you're able to offer insights to the user who is capturing that data. Perhaps you're able to make real-time suggestions for what they can do to improve their interior of the house. For the self-driving car, you're able to make a suggestion of how to steer a vehicle, how to avoid pedestrians, etc. Because you've created basically a 2D map, you've stitched the data together to create a 3D model. So this is really a very empowering technology. A lot of companies are now using computer vision, and it's great to hear, Nick, that you've already started to consider these technologies at Acoutera, and yeah, it's always fun to have these types of discussions with companies and see how we can extend their current tech to push beyond sort of the current realm. So Nick, you've mentioned to me that you guys have already 3D modeling software. You've mentioned that you already help real estate owners to renovate their places. You've mentioned to me that you are in the process of creating a mobile application that can allow you to leverage sort of the video, or so the imagery or the videos information you have. Let's talk about sort of the next step. What is on the road plan for Acoutera? Where is the company going 1 year, 5 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely. So just relating to the mobile developments, we're not doing mobile yet. That's actually part of the roadmap. That's something we'll be doing in the future. But it's yeah, just because we're currently fully browser based, but when we get into mobile, we'll have to focus both on Android and iOS. So that's going to be probably within the next maybe even a year from now. We don't want to get into that too soon, just because we want to focus on what's working and just get really, really good at that. So it's really interesting. So there's a lot of paths one can go down from our current standpoint. Just to give you an idea of what we're currently doing, we're based in Vancouver, BC. We take customers through the whole renovation process, and we kind of automate the whole pre-sale process currently. So this is where we're at now, and now we're starting to automate part of the materials delivery aspect of it from various suppliers, and trying to basically condense the timeline of the pre-sale process and the post-sale like renovation process into the shortest time frame possible. The product roadmap we're currently only focused on bathroom renovations. We'll be doing kitchens shortly soon, and also getting into other types of renovations. And actually, we've had a lot of discussions with people in the prefab space, just very tentatively, but or like post, like let's say you're selling a unit as a developer and you need it to be finished. There's a lot of applications in which our kind of like design process can apply. So we're exploring all of them. We're also going to be launching in Toronto, Ontario, and then going down to the States. So down to we have a few like good locations we want to launch in on the West and the East Coast as well. So it's taking this kind of like replicable, simple model and dropping it into multiple cities, launching there. That's like on the roadmap from an operations standpoint and a growth standpoint. And from a tech standpoint, we just want to continue simplifying the process. There's a lot of improvements to be made. So, for example, we figured out the labor issues, like a lot of the labor issues when it comes to renovations. There's a lot of material issues, and this is kind of dependent on supplier. They all have various means of storing their information. Some don't use inventory tracking, so you have to like almost have a predictive element in it, and it's taking all these various suppliers who have different means of storing their information, different ways of deliveries, different ways to give you access to their information, and streamlining that across a single like consistent process, and now using that to be able to show customers what they can purchase. So the simplification and automation on materials is short to medium term. Getting into iOS and Android is definitely more long term, but we're actually, like by long term I mean like within the next year or so, and just kind of setting up our software to be applicable in multiple cities rather than just Vancouver. There's further scalability like issues that we can fix from the software standpoint, where by scalability I mean we have a lot more design options for customers to choose. We make it simpler to choose like all the materials that you would like to order, automated sample deliveries. There's really a lot. So I think the biggest innovations will come from completely automating the materials aspect of things. So that's really exciting to us.
Let's talk about the impact that you and your team make, right? You described this idealistic vision of simplifying the traditional processes. So let's shift and decide, what kind of impact do you want to make as a company? Do you want people to rethink how they renovate or consider the renovation process? Do you want to go after a certain percentage of the marketplace in terms of your ability to capture and provide services? Are you focused on the residential? Are you considering commercial? Let's talk about impact.
Yeah, so I think like in the future we want to like one of the biggest impacts we want to have is if we can take a look at any given person, and if we have given them the ability to now have kind of like their ideal home, like whatever's in their mind, if we can take that, give them access to a 3D version of that, and then build that into physical reality, and anybody can access that with a few clicks, and it's generally affordable. It's not like VIP exclusive for only like, let's say, people who can afford it at the top like few percent. Like once we can essentially democratize the world's best home renovation experience, then we'll feel we have succeeded. Yeah, so that's the long-term impact. We want to enable anybody to basically find any photos they like, turn that into a 3D view in a few clicks, and then take that and turn that into a physical reality within their house, and it looks identical, with all the costs that were initially predicted to be exactly that, for the timelines to be predicted, for labor to be exactly that, and that is we think will play a huge impact on just people's happiness. We actually interviewed this marriage counselor at some point because we saw like there was a lot of jokes about renovations linking to divorces and stuff. Kind of a touchy subject for some people, but she said that like it's actually a pretty common source. I think it was in her top 3 or top 4 um, reasons why people get divorced, because they just have like how stressful a home renovation process is. The other on the top of the list were moving and then having a baby and then money issues. But yeah, that was up there. That was really surprising to us.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this, Nick. So the stress induced by the renovation process is definitely one of the key elements that you're able to address with your platform, with your brand. And I'm curious, from the perspective of an individual who has never done renovations before, what do they expect when they're looking on your website, when they're considering your services, right? You have a complete beginner, they have no experience about renovations. What are the expectations today? And perhaps, what are you doing to address those expectations?
Yeah, so even though they might have never renovated, I'm sure they have heard stories of their friends who have and the terrible experiences that they've gone through. So when we're like offering them our website, when we're talking to customers, homeowners, we want to almost address that, in that, like, yeah, this actually does occur, and if you kind of map out what are the root causes of this stress, like what are the true reasons why the stress happens, why it's usually a shitty process, sorry, a terrible process. It's normally because the contractor is incompetent at actually doing the renovation, or B, terrible planning. You can have a great contractor, but if the materials are not figured out beforehand and you start the project, there's going to be delays. Like halfway through the process, you're going to be waiting for things to come in from other cities, and it's going to delay your 3-week renovation to maybe like there are stories out there that some initially few week renovations are lasting 4, 5, 6 months, and this actually happens because people change their minds halfway through the process, and that creates a lot of stress because now you have to find new materials, you have to source them, find them, have them be shipped in, and this assumes that the contractor can do a good quality job. So we want to address that, in that, hey, this is like kind of we know these issues and here's how we're solving them, so it's not an issue when the project starts. And we'll also typically cover why our labor that we would actually come in from our process is competent and can do like a good job. So we have a 60-point inspection process. It's a whole thorough process, and I think customers typically really like that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like we're seeing agreement to what you're saying. So we have a comment on Facebook. Rail says, renovations are definitely stressful. At least my bathroom now will be fixed thanks to Acoutera. Definitely, it's something that the audience agrees with, right? So reducing stress is at least one of your priorities. And the other is simplifying the process, like the title of this talk. I'm also curious, Nick, as to what you think is sort of the impact of COVID-19 on the home and renovations industry. Now, before you answer, I'll give the audience an observation that I think is worth considering. COVID-19 has drastically changed all industries, right? Renovations and home, the industry is just one example. And what we find in this process, people are oftentimes told to stay inside for sort of health and legal reasons. And because of these strict, sometimes almost unethical requirement to stay inside for at least 2 weeks, sometimes even more. We're readapting what it means to live a normal life. We're discovering that, hey, maybe we need to take care of ourselves. Maybe we need to take care of our home. And now we're looking around. And so the real question is, how do we allow sort of how do we adapt as humanity to COVID-19? And sort of that, again, preludes to the question is, how is COVID-19 changing the renovation space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So regarding renovations, for the first 3 months, it was kind of like we were affected in that there wasn't like the moment the pandemic happened in North America around March of 2020, everybody was inside, and there was kind of this implied panic where nobody went outside, and as a result, we were affected in that nobody, like, we had a lot of projects that were about to start, and then they were postponed as a result. Um, Also, in addition to this, people are just, it's when the pandemic happened, like, nobody wanted other strangers in their house, so everybody's staying inside. Since then, about 3 months later, we actually found that because people are staying inside all day, maybe they notice that their spaces need like change. So we've kind of actually been in a kind of a lucky position in that people are looking to renovate their homes still, even during the pandemic. What we have done to address the opportunity of this is we've kind of, through our 3D model, we've created almost like an online estimate. So normally when an estimate occurs, the homeowner would have contractors come by their house, and they would inspect everything, come back with pricing a few times, and then they would negotiate this way. Because we like have a 3D version of what each person's room looks like, we can basically do a virtual renovation walkthrough with them before the construction starts. So we would hop on a Zoom call or over a phone, and then we would just kind of guide them through like the 3D process, and they almost see like what their space will look like with the materials that they chose. So it's pretty cool. Sometimes there are in-person estimates, so we actually have a COVID checklist where wear a mask and sanitize and take all the proper precautions before visiting somebody's home, because I mean, ultimately a renovation takes place in somebody's home, so you have to be very careful with that. So we've been taking pretty strong like precautions and measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Yeah, COVID definitely has been the black swan of 2020, and now we're in a new year where we're thinking differently. We're reevaluating, what to do next. So I'm curious to hear your plans for 2021. I know you've mentioned short-term and long-term goals, but how are you seeing your consumers, your customers shifting in 2021?
Yeah, well, I think that I think that there's going to be a lot of vaccines. There's a lot of companies innovating to make that happen. So we will have at some point in the future, I think it's going to be this year, not a shortage, but actually like a lot of like definitely enough vaccines for people I think in Canada, eventually all countries. And I don't know exactly which month this will occur, but I think we'll see some similar trends as last year, where the summer just generally going to be less common or it's going to be less severe, and it's going to be a little bit more controlled, the COVID-19 cases. So I think it's reasonable to assume that around summertime, it's going to be a hybrid model of virtual and in person. I think there's still people who will rightfully be not want to take on lots of people in their homes and will want to take all the proper precautions because they might be at risk or they might know somebody. So it's going to be coming into the situation aware that it will most likely be a hybrid model, and not even for 2021, but in the future. I think work from home is going to be affecting a lot of the way a lot of people work. So I actually think this is a good opportunity for the home improvement industry because people are in their homes more. So if normally an office would get a renovation budget for the commercial space, this time it might be a budget for every employee's, for example, actual space that they're living in if they're working from home. So I think work from home is actually beneficial for the home improvement industry.
Absolutely. I think that there are many interesting trends that happen in 2020, including people staying more at home, like you mentioned. And one of the trends that I've noticed, and I wanted to share with you, Nick, is that I think there is an interesting phenomena where a lot of the physical based businesses or organizations that had many of their assumptions based on the physicality of their services or products are questioning their methods. And one of the trends that I noticed in 2019 and rather 2020 and now going to 2021 is companies that are now thinking digitally first. And now they are thinking, okay, so how do we create a digital first experience? And then how do we extend that to the physical world, right? So now you're sort of shifting the paradigm from physical to digital. You're now going from digital to physical. And while I'm describing this concept, at the same time, I envision, what that looks like for the house, right? So if you do have a cell phone and you are able to capture data from where the person lives, now you're able to create a digital world that has no limitations, has no boundaries, has no physical restrictions, other than sort of perhaps the current limitations of data itself, the capture mechanisms used by the cell phones themselves. Imagine you're able to create a digital world. You're able to explore that digital world in any way possible, whether you're suggesting a new piece of furniture or you are perhaps demolishing a wall to fit something else. Well, in this new paradigm, you're operating in a digital frontier. You're operating under much less sort of boundaries that you would encounter in the physical world. And now you sort of bridge the gap between the digital and the physical, and you perhaps offer suggestions of how the house owner can improve their existing place of setting. And now you're able to perhaps explore new worlds. So I'll bring one attention to a project that I think you will appreciate. There is an amazing company that is doing work in the digital let's say architecture creation space. This is a company called Decentraland, and hopefully I'll have a chance to link this in the show notes. Decentraland is actually a very unique yet very promising company because they are aiming to create a digital land which includes houses and virtual homes and everything in the world, right? And they're doing so using the latest web-based technologies. They're using blockchain technologies for those who are interested to learn more about Decentraland. And the link to that, I'll also link in the show notes. It is decentraland.org. And this is the link how you can visit. I'll just put that in the show notes. So the reason I bring Decentraland into the mix is because Decentraland is, I believe, the evolution of how we think about sort of the next generation of exploration, the next generation of imagination, creativity. And if you're able to envision a digital world, and now you're bridging the gap between the digital and physical, now you're really opening the space of the reality. And if you guys are able to capture data from users' houses, I can see an extension where you're able to create a digital world from those images.
Yeah, I think you mentioned some good points in that the gap between like a digital representation of reality and physical reality is narrowing. One instance of that, which you brought up, is that there's more capture mechanisms, and actually not only that, but the means of turning that into a digital like representation of the physical space is increasing. So, for example, now that we have, and in the future, surely in the future, we'll have a lot more static 2D image to pick using, for example, the pixel-based prediction, which will become more common over time. It'll be easier to access, to go from 2D image, which is just, it's not that hard to get a camera to take a photo of a space, and to go from that to like a 3D representation of that. The amount of times that will happen will increase because it's going to be more easily accessible. There are more devices, they're cheaper. Well, unless you're buying like the latest iPhone, I guess, but there's more cameras, there's more these sensory inputs that can be used to create a digital representation of the world. So I definitely think that trend is going up. Yeah, it's really interesting, especially browser based. So I think browser based is also a really interesting trend to look at because, for example, WebGL is really powerful. It enables you to send like GPU friendly code to your GPU to render something in your browser. Later in the next, I think it's going to be actually later this year. It should have been actually late last year, but there are some delays in releasing it, I believe. WebGPU will be coming out, which is a much upgraded version of WebGL, which will bridge the gap between browser-based render capabilities and desktop native render capabilities much more. So it will enable browsers to access the GPU in a much more efficient manner. So basically, the SolidWorks of the world, the things that are very GPU heavy and that are not like much more impossible to achieve the same thing at the same time on a browser as you can on a native desktop software, it will now be more possible because the gap between desktop and browser based is it seems to be narrowing. So I think the future is, yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's going to be, I think the trend of easier to capture the world, more processes to take that into a digital representation, and just more browser-based kind of renderings will mean that we will see in the next couple of years like a lot more browser-based technologies and really virtual representations of reality. So the trends are going up for that. So it's definitely a really interesting industry to be in. And I'm pretty excited to be kind of at the crux of these industries, or the crux of these technologies and where they're at.
Nick, it's great to hear you're considering the latest tech to build out Acoutera into something that is able to scale across the world. I'm curious, need to go forward, right? You obviously have a team, you're scaling, you have customers. What are your requirements to get to the point where you're able to leverage that technology?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So we're heavily relying on WebGL. We're relying on an industry that there's a lot of, and we're trying to solve the materials issues, but you can really go down a big rabbit hole in how far you can solve a lot of the issues. You can get to automated shipping, you can get to, there's just so many cool things that can be done. So it's really hiring and being able to sustain the talent of having just some of the best people in the world in these domains. For example, having some of the best people in WebGL, I think is critically important in logistics supply chain to kind of enable us to create the seamless integrated process that just works and is affordable. And you can't really have, like, you can, but it's a difficult balance, because if you have just the 3D rendering stuff, but not the execution side of fulfilling these renovations, for example, if you outsource to another labor company, you will have ultimately expensive renovations for consumers. So it's the balance of having all of this integrated together, from design to materials to executing the labor, all like more or less vertically integrated, so that the consumer can get a more affordable price than if they were to go elsewhere, and a much simpler experience, and when the pre-sale process can be done in 5 minutes versus 6 weeks if they weren't to go with us. So I think hiring people from various domains that are like really can take a key responsibility in each of these domains is going to be the limiting kind of factor for growth at an effective rate.
Absolutely. It sounds like hiring is something that a lot of companies struggle with. For some, that often means spending time and resources to hire in-source teams that are coming on the team, and they're able to scale sort of through the onboarding process. In other instances, it involves outsourcing. So a little background to myself and my company: we have worked with brands around the world for the past 8 years to scale and develop AI-driven solutions for individuals and companies who do not want to hire in-house and would rather work with a partner. In that case, our team has a network of 1,000 plus freelancers who are able to sort of come in and do the necessary task to scale any project to any size. And that often involves sort of this, what you consider to be an outsourced approach, but that also allows you to be a little bit more hands-off and allows you to focus on other business domains. And this is something that Produvia and myself were quite very, very well involved in. And beyond that, the outsourced approach and the in-source approach, well, being able to hire the best talent is often a great idea, especially if they're on the edge of technology. Now you're able to really bring that technology to the masses of the consumers, and that always is a good win, right? So any company that's able to scale a really good user experience and provide that experience to as many people as possible will typically create a very monopolistic position in the marketplace. And it's great to hear you guys are scaling. It's great to hear you guys are thinking about the latest tech. It's great to hear you guys are exploring all the possible options to how you simplify renovations. And it's super interesting to hear how you've progressed over the last several years. And I'm very excited to see where things go. I know that this live stream is meant to be interactive, and I want to surface another question, or rather another statement from one of our audience, and that is Yulia on VK asks, or she makes a statement and says, "Thanks, Slava, I love your interviews." I appreciate that, Yulia, and it's great to hear from our audience as well. I encourage everyone to ask questions, ask self of our hosts, and also make a statement. I appreciate your feedback. And the vision that I want to start concluding this interview is that we live in an amazing world. In this world, we're able to envision anything and bring that vision into reality, and that's one of the reasons why I really think that Acoutera has lots of potential, because you guys are envisioning a better world, a world where you're reducing stress, you're simplifying process, you're reducing the complexities of what is often appears to be a complex process, and you're making it simpler. And that's always a good thing. If you're able to capture more value, that means more people and customers are seeing what you offer and finding value in that. At the same time, I want to start concluding with any call to actions and any links that you would like to share with your audience. I know that that I've previously linked to Acoutera, and I'll do so at the moment as well. If for those who are interested to learn more about Nick and his team, feel free to visit acoutera.com. And if you have any specific concluding remarks, Nick, feel free to let me know and share with your audience perhaps something that you would want everyone to know.
Yeah, honestly, I think that there's not enough talent going into the construction and just, yeah, the whole construction industry, the home improvement industry. A lot of talent going into, I think they're almost like at high school level. There's this like kind of divergence of talent. Like some people go like more tech route and some people go more trades route, but really like people who are going into like trades, like fundamentally you build a world that everyone lives in. So that's a pretty critical aspect of the future. So I think that yeah, there's also a lot of opportunities. Like the more we're in it, the more issues we see and that just have not been addressed. There's a lot of opportunity for any company to, if they want to like start a new venture, to go into the construction and renovation space. Supply chain, for like sometimes it's like some suppliers don't leverage, have not leveraged the internet since it has come out, or even spreadsheet technology, which has come out before the internet. So like sometimes it's harder to order a product from a business that sells that product than it is to like get a random stranger to pick you up in a car and drive you across the city within 10 minutes, which is kind of mind blowing. Like, yeah. So there's all these innovations that can happen. And I definitely encourage people to just look at, maybe not just jump right in, but well, sure, you can jump right in, but just like kind of take a look, maybe read some home improvement or construction fundamental textbooks or something, and like take a look and see what the issues are and see if there's any means of solving it. Because yeah, there's just not much innovation happening in this space. So it's kind of nice that we are innovating, but it'd be also cool to like see others also in the space come in and try to make a like meaningful change.
Absolutely. And Nick, I want to bring attention to the fact that Acoutera is hiring. I know you guys have at least 4 positions available hire on AngelList. And I want to bring this to attention in that anyone who's interested either in renovations and home renovations or in sort of the latest modern technologies, they should definitely check out Acoutera jobs.
Yeah, we're looking for a software kind of back-end, front-end engineer who can take on multifaceted roles, willing to learn new things that they probably haven't worked on, such as WebGL, maybe web AR even, but also kind of take a response, like yeah, or any process you think you can fit in, like including sales. We're looking for a solid salesperson. And yeah, like really what we want to see if you've done really awesome projects in the past and you can take on a pretty big responsible role at the company, where we can rely on you, and then you can like yeah, we can rely on you, and then you can kind of take ownership for the domain that you're in. So we're definitely looking for like high quality people. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I've linked the AngelList postings that you guys have for those who are interested to learn more about Acoutera. Feel free to check it out. Feel free to apply. Feel free to send Nick and his team a message. I know that I am keeping a close eye on Acoutera because renovations is something that I'm always thinking about. How can I improve where I live? How can I improve my personal space, where I work, or where my family lives? And renovations is definitely on top of my list. At the same time, I want to conclude this live stream by thanking Nick, by thanking everyone who joined this audio video live stream. Anyone who is interested, feel free to re-watch this live stream to learn more about the details of, in case you've missed something. And this live stream is something that will be publicly available for anyone to view and share with others. So feel free to do that. I will also be scheduling another live stream in next Friday. So for those who are interested, feel free to join, and we will talk about the recruiting space and how companies are able to leverage technologies, modern technologies, to redefine and rethink the outsourcing of sort of talent and recruiting space. And this will be a live stream next week with the company called VanHack. So feel free to tune in. If you subscribe to Produvia, I'll share a link with the show notes. You can actually get notifications to these live streams, and that way you can learn more about what's coming up, what kind of interviews are being created for these series. So this live stream is meant to educate. This live stream is meant to inspire. I want to thank Nick for his time, and I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Nick, feel free to say a few sounding sort of words of finishing, and we'll end the live stream.
Yeah, it was great being interviewed by you. You are a great host. So yeah, really awesome to be here, and yeah, looking forward to eventually maybe doing some more with you in the future.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. All right, this concludes our live stream.